Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing non-profit, educational, or personal use, tips the balance in favor of fair use. The footage I use in this video is for education and critique purposes. Fair use. Shalom, people. So Hollywood, they know that black people ruled Europe. They also know that we are the people of the scriptures, and the wild man is not a fallen angel. So with that being said, what I've done, I've taken 3 TV shows that I'm going to use as a backdrop to illustrate my point. Now, the first TV show that we're going to go over is titled, or it's called, The Jeffersons, and the episode is called From Once Upon a Time. Now, I'm mainly going to use this as a backdrop to illustrate from an aesthetic standpoint of what the ruling class / nobility looked like during the medieval ages. So with that being said, let's play the video.
I know somebody who's not afraid of inflation. Bring in the full.
So I've paused the video here. Now, brothers, sisters, this is a 100% accurate portrayal of what the medieval rulers looked like in Europe. So I'm going to flash some quick images. Now you may be saying to yourself, KMC, you're reaching. This is just a TV show. You're looking too deep into it. You keep telling yourself that. I've mentioned this before. All these Hollywood movie directors, producers, so on and so forth, they know that our people ruled Europe. They also know that we are the people of the scriptures. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cross-reference this with 2 other TV shows, proving they know that we are the people of the scriptures. But I'm going to come back to the Jeffersons because some of you brothers and sisters think that the wild man descends from fallen angel seed, or he comes from a fallen angel. And that's not true. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the other 2 TV shows that I mentioned. So this is Sanford and Son. Let's see what takes place.
What is it?
Wait a minute. Look at it. Have you eyes but see not? Which would come in handy if you're looking at Esther. See, this is our family crest, son, right here. And look at that crown. I am a king. There it is right there. I've been right all along.
Yes, a crown symbolizes rulership, a crown symbolizes leadership, a crown symbolizes the head. So brothers, sisters, when you see these European coats of arms that feature black men and women on them with crowns on their head, they are kings, queens, lords, dukes, princesses, barons, rulers of territory, rulers of nations, so on and so forth. They are not African slaves that the Caucasian decided to put on their coats of arms, like they're going to tell you.
I am a king. There it is right there. I've been right all along. See, that's the crown, and right there, that's Ethiopia. That's where my family came from. And right here, see, that's black and white hand intermingled. Whatever that means. And then here's a shield showing that we were great warriors.
With a Jewish star on it.
Yeah. I wonder what that means.
That means, Fred Sanford, if I know my Bible, and I know my Bible, you are a descendant of a king of the Jews. And if you're a king, you're also Jewish.
Jewish?
Gee, that's funny. You don't look it.
I'm Jewish.
Well, he's not Jewish, he's an Israelite, and there is a difference between an Israelite and a Jewish person. there's also a difference between an Israelite and an Israeli. Now, I'm just going to leave it as that because we all know when you happen to criticize or mention a certain group of people that like to wear circular hats that are small for their heads, they're going to call you an anti-you-know-what, and they're going to use that as an excuse to copyright strike the video, block it, or shadow ban it. But yeah, this is how they portray subliminal messaging through the TV shows and movies because they know it's going to go over 99.9% of black people's heads. So this is the TV show Good Times, and the little segment that we're about to view, it's very revealing because they're going to showcase they know that Christ, Yahushua, is a so-called black man, and they're going to back it up using the scriptures. Also, it's going to showcase, even though we tell our people the truth of the scriptures and who they are, they're still going to reject it because our people have been conditioned with the church system, religious doctrines, and whitewashed history. So with that being said, let's see what takes place.
Couldn't we at least let Black Jesus hang alongside?
Forget it. The only Jesus I know is him, and the one thing he don't need is a partner.
Mama, how do we know Jesus wasn't black? He could have been from the lost tribe of Israel. They were supposed to be black.
I bet they were. If ever people were lost, we're it.
So you see how blatant this was? So the young brother just said, how do we know that Jesus, so-called Jesus, I'm just going to use that name for convenience sake, but he said, how do we know that Jesus wasn't black? He was supposed to be from the lost tribe of Israel, and they were supposed to be black. And this brother responded, I bet they were. If ever our people were lost, we are it. Now the young brother is going to use the scriptures to back up what he stated, proving Christ, Yahushua, is a so-called black man. But even though he used the scriptures to reveal this, the elder sister is still going to reject it because it's going to showcase and indicate how our people have been mass indoctrinated by the church system, the image of Cesare Borgia, and whitewashed history. So let's see what takes place.
Now just hush up, both of you. This picture has been in my family for as long as I can remember. When I was a baby, I don't know what I saw first. My mama, my papa, or this Jesus. Now, he's the one I know and love, so let's close the subject.
And this is the major issue with our people. So you hear what she just said. She said that image of Cesare Borgia has been in her family for as long as that she can remember. So basically, it's been in her family for generations. She also said she doesn't know what she saw first as a baby, her mama, her pappy, or that image of Cesare Borgia. She also said that is the only image of Jesus that she knows and loves, and that's the end of the conversation. So you see how she just shut down any thought of Christ, Yahushua, being a black man. And I'm sure some of you brothers have experienced this when you've tried to tell loved ones or family members. But with that being said, the young brother is going to use the scriptures to back up what he was saying, and we're going to see her reaction to it.
Jesus was black, the Bible would have said so.
But it does say so.
What are you talking about?
I read about it. It's in Revelations chapter 1, verse 14. I read about it in Muhammad Speaks. It says, his hair is like wool, and his eyes are like flame of fire.
Well, Lord have mercy. It sure do say that, don't it?
And see, Mama, look at that hair, like wool, ain't it? And look at them eyes, red like fire.
Yeah, they sure is. Junior, how come you decided to paint this?
I don't know. All of a sudden, I just had divine thoughts on my mind.
And for JJ, that's a first.
What, having divine thoughts?
No, having a mind.
I guess I ought to be grateful for JJ having Jesus on his mind in any color.
Then we can hang it on the wall, Mama?
Well, now,
Please, Mama.
All right. But just for Black History Week. After that, he comes down.
So you see, even though the young brother used the scriptures to back up what he was saying, at the end, she still rejected it. What did she say? She said that image is coming down after Black History Week. It just shows you the conditioning of our people. Even though we show them things directly in the scriptures, what do they say? Color doesn't matter. It's about his message. Jesus loves us all. Why are you so hateful? God is all about love. When you reveal that the people of the scriptures are so-called black, some of our people react like you've just said the most blasphemous thing. That programming is deep within our people. But on an off note, don't pray over these images, even if it's an image of Black Christ or the Most High. Don't pray over no image, statue, or relic. I just use things like these as a backdrop to illustrate my point. I say the same thing with the Russian icons. Don't pray over the Russian icons, even though they're featuring so-called black people. And since we're on the topic of our people being the people of the scriptures, some of you think that the black Europeans were Edomites. The black Europeans were not Edomites, they were Israelites. Now some of you subscribe to that notion because you think that Esau and his descendants are not the white man. What I've also noticed is that some of you think only the Aboriginal Americans are the Israelites. So when you see the black Europeans going over to the Americas, colonizing it, and enslaving some of the Aboriginal population, you think that they're Edomites. This is why also in my Byzantine icons and Black Russians video, I had to go over the 1,000-year prophecy of how the white man / Esau was cast off into the bottomless pit. Now what is the bottomless pit? The bottomless pit is the chasms, the rocks, the forests, the wooded regions, and the caves where he dwelt. He got cast off from civilization and he delved into his beast-like state known as the wild man, where he grew excessive shaggy body hair and he crawled around on all fours. Which leads me into another doctrine. Some of you think that the wild man comes from fallen angel seed. Basically, fallen angels came from heaven, they took wives, and their offspring were the Nephilim / giants / beast-like looking creatures. So when people see images of the wild man, they think they come from fallen angels. That doctrine is false. All the wild man is the Caucasian being cast off from civilization. It has nothing to do with fallen angels, but I'm going to go over that later. But going back to the black Europeans being Israelites, I would say the majority of Europe was ruled by Judah or the Judites. Places like Belgium, Austria, the Netherlands, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Italy, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, just to name a few. Now in form of the Vikings / Northmen / Norsemen, you had the Benjamite sector and you had the Danite sector. Now of course, wherever you find Benjamin, you're going to find Judah and vice versa, with a sprinkling of the Levites. Now when it comes to Dan's portion, or the Danite sector I should say, they inhabited places like Iceland, Greenland, Finland, Norway, Sweden, of course, Denmark, aka Dan's land or Dan's mark. Now that's not to say that you didn't have Benjamin and Judah in those lands. I'm just mainly focusing on the Danites right now. But the tribes did intermingle and assimilated with one another. So from an individual specificity standpoint, it's hard to tell which tribe you exactly come from. For example, apart from those lands that I just mentioned, the Danites also inhabited a large portion of Northern Ireland. So brothers, whenever you hear about the Viking invasions of Ireland, specifically focusing on the Danes, that was basically Dan invading and ransacking Judah. After they invaded, they fortified, set up and established towns on the coastal lines, towns such as Waterford, Dublin, Cork. They also set up a lot of trade and commerce settlements. Now, of course, they were still beefing with the neighbouring Irish clans or the Judites. Speaking of the Judites, here is an Israelite king list of some of the kings of Ireland and Scotland from the line of Judah. Now, this is from a book called The British Israelites. But going back to the Danes beefing with the Irish clans, some of those Irish clans actually joined on to the Danes. So basically, they had a Norse-Irish alliance. And this is what I was telling you guys about how the Israelite tribes intermingled with each other. So from an individual specific standpoint, it's hard to tell which exact tribe you come from. Some of you that may trace your lineage to the Irish and think that you're from Judah, you may actually be of Dan. Or who knows, you could be Benjamin or Levi. But sticking with Ireland, those Danes eventually got defeated in the early 1000 AD period. Now, after those Danes got defeated, the remaining Danes actually assimilated and settled within the Irish population. So basically, it's hard to tell which tribe is which. So this is why we have to go by group migrations. Speaking of migration patterns, our people were known to be a seafaring people. They set up colonies, trade routes, settlements, and engaged in commercial trade, especially when we look at tribes like Dan and Asher. But since we already went over some information on the tribe of Dan, let's go over some information on the tribe of Asher. Now, the tribe of Asher had territory in Tyre and Sidon, around the coastal lines. Now, they sailed all throughout the Mediterranean, engaging in commercial trade and setting up colonies. Just like Dan, they also eventually made it to the islands in Western Europe. So I thought I would add this because sometimes people have questions of why certain things exist. So why is the lion so prevalent in medieval Europe? I know basically nothing about medieval history and the geographical distribution of lions. Forgive any dumb stuff I say. From what I can tell, lions are animals native to sub-Saharan Africa. Why were they so prevalent in Europe? Like, you have 3 on the royal arms of England, 1 on the royal banner of Scotland, 1 on the coat of arms of Finland, and even Richard I of England was called the Lionheart. I get that the Romans brought them up to fight gladiators, but did that really influence later medieval culture so much? Again, forgive my ignorance. I'm just really curious as to why an African animal would be so important to the heraldry and culture of medieval Europe. Could it be that all those lions represent the tribe of Judah, and by association, the Israelites ruled Europe? Nah, we all know that the Bible is just a fairy tale and a bunch of folklore, right? So now we're back to the Jeffersons. Now before I replay this video, I want you guys to take a look at the brother's crown. You see the symbol that's embedded within the crown. For those who don't know, that is called the fleur-de-lis or the lily flower, and that symbol was popularized or made popular by a lot of the Frank or French kings. Now I just want to use this to segue into 2 images. One of the images I've already shown, one I haven't. But I just want to use these images for visual stimulation to showcase what the ruling class or nobility looked like during the Middle Ages and not the whitewashed garbage that you see. So this is an image of Robert II, King of France, also known as Robert the Pious. Now he was from the Capetian dynasty, or the House of Capet, and the House of Capet was started by his father, Hugh Capet. But as you can see on his garments, you see the fleur-de-lis, the same symbol that was on the crown. But as you can see, most importantly, you can see that Robert II was a so-called black man. Just like all of the nobility. So this is an image portraying Louis XI, King of France. And just like Louis XI, you can see that everybody in this image is a so-called black person. Now you see what these images look like when they haven't been whitewashed. I've mentioned this before in past videos. When these people try to whitewash the images, sometimes it comes out in like a dark, grayish, fadish tint because they've tried to scrub out the color. And because it comes out in that dark grey color, they can just say it got dark over time. I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. So this is an image portraying Isabella of France, portrayed in the red garments, accompanied with some knights. Now I briefly went over Isabella and her husband, Edward II, in my broadcast coats of arms video. But take a good look at everybody in this image. You see how all of them have that dark grayish tint I was talking about. Take a good look at their faces. The reason why they have that discoloration is it's because they've tried to whitenize the image. And they're just going to tell you it got dark over time. And I've always said this in my videos. It's funny how the darkening effect always seems to affect the part where it shows their skin complexion, like their face, their hands, their legs, their feet, and so forth.
I know somebody who's not afraid of inflation. Bring in the fool!
George, what are you going to do?
Well, Weez, I'm going to face inflation man to man.
And then what?
Then I'll just do what any other king would do in this situation. I'll try to bribe him.
That was no lady, that was my gargoyle. Let's be Jack.
So I've paused the video here. Now George, that's the brother that's wearing the crown, said bring in the fool. And as we can see, the fool is played by the Caucasian. And I just want to use this to segue into the wild man. Brothers, our people had the wild man / Caucasian as a form of entertainment throughout Europe. For example, our people will host theatre shows, plays, festivals and balls mocking the wild man. Our people will put on animal fur or flax to mimic the excessive body hair and the shaggy hair texture of the wild man. Then they will crawl around on all fours and act like savages, mimicking the Caucasian / wild man. Another example, in 16th century England, around the Christmas time period, they held festivals and balls showcasing the defeat of the wild man. Our people would once again dress up as the wild man and show renditionings of battles between the knights and the wild men of the woods. Also over in Germany, Saxony, there was something called the wild hunt, where our people would have mock renditionings and ceremonies of where the wild man would flee into the woods and would get shot by an arrow by the nobility. Also, brothers, sisters, the wild man got thirst trapped. Yes, you heard me correctly. I'm gonna say it again. The wild man got thirst trapped. What do I mean by this? Basically, the nobility would get a beautiful woman and send that woman into the abode and the dwelling places of the wild man. And of course, the wild man would be allured by that woman. Then that woman would lead the wild man into a trap, and then the nobility would kill off the wild man. So lambacking of that, there was also something known as wild man taming. So what is wild man taming? Basically, the wild man was used as a pet. Now, this was mainly done by young, beautiful, and women of nobility. What they would do, of course, they would use their looks to allure the wild man, and then they would put a chain around his neck or his ankle, and he would be used basically as like a dog. So now I just want to make a quick disclaimer. For any of you brothers and sisters that decide to research the wild man in your own time, you're going to have to dodge a lot of narrative, because what they've done, they've sensationalized and mystified the wild man. So for example, you may come across a story like this. In medieval Europe, there was a legend, and this legend was there was a half man, half beast-like looking creature that was very hairy. He had goat's legs, and he had long horns, and he had long sharp fingernails. And what this half man, half beast, half goat man did, he went around kidnapping children, sacrificing them, and eating their flesh. Now, when you hear a story like that, it sounds like a fairy tale. It sounds like a good story, but it's based on reality of the wild man. They've just sensationalized it by adding the horns, the goat's legs, and the long nails. So you have to read in between the lines and use discernment when you're researching the wild man. So with that being said, I've highlighted key points about the wild man, which I'm going to read out. So the wild man is a typical product of the Middle Ages. The stories tell that he lives in the wilderness, far from civilization, in the midst of wild animals. So I'm going to say it once, and I'm going to say it many times in this video. All the wild man is, or the wild people are, I should say, are the Caucasians being cast off from civilization, where they delve into the beast-like state. It has nothing to do with fallen angel seed. So let's continue. There, in the forest or in the mountains, he has a cave or a bush as a hiding place. He can survive in the harshest conditions thanks to his immense strength. He probably owes this to his hairy fur. The wild man is aggressive and wants to regularly test his strength through combat. He fights against wild animals and against knights, and those knights would have been our people, but also against other wild men. The wild man was often described as a fool and a savage who could hardly speak or not at all. He knew no civilization and often walked on all fours. He knew no agriculture and no fire, and so had to catch or gather his food and eat it raw. He would also occasionally kidnap children and eat human flesh. Yes, because the wild man was also known to be a cannibal, and I highlighted the cannibalism part in my Black Byzantine icons and Black Russians video. So when he was angry, he pulled little trees out of the ground and destroyed and tore everything else in his path. It was even questionable whether the wild man was a human being or an animal, since he was also described in the bestiaries. Now, for those who don't know, a bestiary is basically like an illustrated manuscript from the medieval time period of stories and weird like animal drawings, but you guys go look up in more detail in your own time. So since he was also described in the bestiaries, he could also be one of many species of exotic animals. As an example of a man who did not use his brain and could not control his impulses, he was an example to everyone of what not to do. In the Middle Ages, It was envisioned that such people still lived in distant exotic places such as India, but also in the most mountainous and remote regions of Europe itself. The medieval German epic depicts a type of tragic savage who at first was a man, then was rejected by society, banished to the forest, and went wild there. Yes, because they were cast off into the bottomless pit, they were cast off from civilization. So now we're going to go through a few images of the wild men. So starting off with this image, as we can see, there's a bunch of wild men in the forest. This is an image of a wild family outside of their little cave. Image of a wild man versus a knight. Here's an image of a wild man crawling around on all fours, like we just read previous. Here's another image of the wild man crawling on all fours in the forest. Here's an image of the wild man and his two wild kids. And as you can see, just like the wild man, his kids are also just as hairy as he is. So first and foremost, ignore the whitewashed image of the woman of nobility. But like I was telling you guys, if the woman didn't lure the wild man to be trapped and killed, she would instead tame him. And this is literally called late 15th century tapestry from Basel, showing a wood rose being tamed by a virtuous lady. And as you can see, she has the ankle lock and chain around his ankle. So this is an ivory-like carving showcasing the knight killing the wild man, saving the woman. So here are 3 images that I've gathered showcasing the wild man holding up coats of arms of their black overlords, their black rulers. Now you have to ask yourself a rhetorical question. If the Caucasian was ruling during the Middle Ages, then why would he depict himself as the naked hairy people, yet simultaneously holding up coats of arms that represents black people on them? It doesn't make any sense, does it? Of course, we can't forget the classic Wild Man versus the Moors tapestry, showcasing the wild men charging through the forest with clubs, attacking the castle, and the king, the queen, the princess, and the knight are all black people. So shout out to the Instagram page, Unfiltered Black History. We're going to read the description he has here of what's being represented in this image. So this is a late 15th century illuminated manuscript of Queen Joanna of Castile, also known as Joanna the Mad, entry into Brussels, Belgium, being escorted by wild women. Joanna the Mad was Queen of Castile and Queen of Aragon, both city-states in Spain. She was married to Philip the Handsome, Archduke of Austria and King of Castile. He was a member of the House of Habsburg. Her father was King Ferdinand II of Aragon, and yes, I touched on the description of Ferdinand II in my Was Queen Anne Boleyn of England Black video, and he was described as being swarthy. So her father was King Ferdinand II of Aragon, King of Castile, and her mother was Queen Isabella I of Castile and Queen of Aragon. Both King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella I are known for issuing the Alhambra Decree in 1492, which expelled hundreds of thousands of Moors from Spain for religious and political reasons, not racial reasons. Yes, and just like the brother said, not racial reasons. I've touched on this in past videos. Some of our people who know some history think that we only ruled from 700 AD till 1492 and that we only ruled in Spain and Portugal. What they don't know is that we ruled the entirety of Europe. And like the brother said, our people were fighting over religious reasons, political reasons. They were also fighting over land ownership, who had the right to sit on the throne, and so forth. But sticking on the religious topic, for the most part, brothers, a lot of our people's rulership in Europe was not righteous, especially when it comes to that Roman Catholic system. There is nothing righteous about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is literally the mystery of iniquity. It's basically paganism mixed in with the scriptures, and this is how they fool the public. And this is why King James himself had beef with the Catholic Church. Brothers, the things that we say about the Catholic Church is the exact same thing King James was saying is in his time period. King James called the Pope the Antichrist. He was also going in on how they worship dead saints and images and relics. He was also going in on them worshipping the Virgin Mary. So let's quickly read some information about what King James had to say about the papacy. So what did King James say about the law of the Catholic saints and Catholic relics? I am loath to believe all the tales of the legend saints concerning the supposed miracles they performed in response to prayers to them. King James called them but tricks. For relics of saints, if I had any such that I were assured were members of their bodies, I would honourably bury them, and not give them the reward of condemned men's members, which are only ordained to be depraved of burial, but for worshipping either them or images. I must account it damnable idolatry. I quarrel not the making of images, either for public decoration or for men's private uses, but that they should be worshipped, be prayed to, or any holiness attributed to them, or unto them, I should say, was never known of the ancients, and the scriptures are so directly, vehemently, and punctually against it, as I wonder what brain of man or suggestion of Satan durst offer it to Christians. But the scriptures forbiddeth to worship the image of anything that God created. The image of God is not only expressly forbidden to be worshipped, but even to be made. The reason given that no eye ever saw God, and how can we paint his face? Let them therefore that maintain this doctrine answer to Christ at the latter day, when he shall accuse them of idolatry. But Christ's cross must have a particular privilege, in brackets, say they, and be worshipped. Nay, rather, say he, blessed are those that hear the word of God and keep it. So what is he saying in simplified terms? He's basically going in and saying that saints were being deified and worshipped, whether that be when they die or if they were in a form of images made of the saints. This is why I tell you guys, even with the Russian icons, don't pray and worship over them, even if it's an icon of the Most High and Christ. Also at the bottom he states, but Christ's cross must have a particular privilege, and in brackets he says they, and be worshipped. Nay, rather, say he, blessed are those that hear the word of God and keep it. So basically, the cross itself, as I'm sure a lot of you brothers know, is not the cross for Christ. That cross is in representation of Tammuz, and you could look it up. It's spelled T-A-U. I think it's pronounced Tau. I'm not too sure. But the cross is not for Christ. Christ was not the first person to be crucified, and he's not going to be the last. Of course, Christ, Yahushua, was the most famous person to be crucified, and the reason why he was crucified is because he was a sacrificial lamb unto Israel to regraft them back to the Father. And of course, that is just me extremely simplifying it. But once again, this is an example of the mystery of iniquity. They tell you that that cross is for Christ, but it's actually for Tammuz. So let's see what King James had to say about praying to the Virgin Mary. And just like in my Byzantine icons and Black Russians video, I said whenever you see a statue or an image of a mother and her child, that's in representation of Semiramis and Tammuz, but they're going to tell you that's portraying Mary and Christ. So, and first for the Blessed Virgin Mary, I yield her that which the angel Gabriel pronounced of her. I reverence her as the mother of Christ, but I dare not mock her and blaspheme God, praying her to command and control her Son, who is her God and her Saviour. Nor yet, not I think, that she hath not other thing to do in heaven than to hear every idle man's sweet, or I think that's pronounced suit because of the Old English, and busy herself in their errands, while requesting, while commanding her Son, while coming down to kiss and make love with priest, and while disputing and brawling with devils. In heaven she is in eternal glory and joy, never to be interrupted with any worldly business. And there I leave her with her blessed Son, our Saviour, and her in eternal facility. So what is King James saying here? He's basically mocking them worshipping Mary. So you think that Mary is in the heavenly realm with the Most High, and she's there answering people's prayers. And just like King James said, that Christ is her God, her Savior, Mary is not above Christ. The only person that is above Yahushua is the Most High Yahweh. But this is how they trick the public. They're going to say it's okay to worship Mary because she birthed Christ. So basically, she's like a divine mother figure. She has a divine womb. So it's okay to get on your knees with your prayer beads, in your hand, and say things like, guide us, our Mother Mary, or say, please help us, Our Lady of Grace. Even in the scriptures, Christ tells you how to pray. What does he say? Our Father who art in heaven, not our Mother Mary or Our Lady of Grace. But like I said, this is how they trick people. I always get these odd comments, the odd comment or two in my comment section saying, KMZ, I love your videos, but you lose me with that Bible crap. Or KMZ makes excellent videos about history, but he loses me when he mentions that religious crap. This is what I always say, religion has nothing to do with the scriptures. Religions use the scriptures as a front. Hey, but if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. For those that haven't hear, let him hear. King James labored to prove the Pope to be the Antichrist out of scripture, and this opinion no Pope can ever make me recant, having now made this digression against the Antichrist, which I am sure I can better fasten upon the Pope than Bellarmine or Bellarmine, as I think it's correctly pronounced. Now, for those who don't know, Bellarmine is a Jesuit and was a cardinal of the Catholic Church. So can do in his pretend temporal superiority over kings, popery is indeed the mystery of iniquity. So now we're back to the image. So the wild women you see escorting the Queen Joanna of Castile are also conventionally known as the Woodrows. Both the wild man and woman inhabited the woods, forest, and caves naked with an excessive amount of body hair, where they carried around lice and diseases due to extremely poor hygiene. And yes, I gotta give a shout out to Chronicles of Judah for putting me on game concerning the wild man bringing diseases into Europe, wiping out a large majority of the black population. Because I knew about black people ruling Europe, what I didn't know is that the Black Death was actually spread by these people. So various medieval manuscripts depict the wild man/woman with excessive body hair. The black nobility would make fun of them by dressing up in hairy costumes at parties. Yes, like I was saying, our people hosted festivals, balls, plays, and theatre shows mocking the wild man. The Bal des Ardents, or Ball of the Burning Man, or Bal des Savages, Ball of the Wild Men, was a masquerade ball held in Paris, France, by members of the French nobility, with King Charles VI of France dressing up as the wild man and making fun of them. And yes, we're going to quickly go over that after this. Modern day historians attempt to claim the wild man phenomenons as a myth to try and masquerade some of their ancestors' poor living conditions. So this is an image representing the ball of the wild men, where Charles VI and members of the French nobility dressed up in wild men costumes, and a freak accident happened when fire caught on their costumes. So we're going to read a little bit of information about this ball. So first and foremost, I already know I'm not going to be able to pronounce the French words correctly, so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to say in my English accent. So the Bal des Ardents, or Ball of the Burning Men, also called Bal des Savages, or Ball of the Wild Men, which was a masquerade ball held on the 28th of January 1393 in Paris, at which Charles VI of France performed in a dance with 5 members of the French nobility. 4 of the dancers were killed in a fire caused by a torch brought in by a spectator, Charles's brother, Louis I, Duke of Orleans. Charles and another of the dancers survived. The ball was one of a number of events intended to entertain the king, who the previous summer had suffered an attack of insanity. The event undermined confidence in Charles's capacity to rule. Charles's wife, Isabeau of Bavaria, held the ball to honor the remarriage of a lady-in-waiting. Scholars believe the dance performed at the ball had elements of traditional chivalry, with the dancers disguised as wild men, mythical beings. Now you see how they had to sneak the mythical in there? Every time you mention the wild man, they always got to put the mythological element behind it. But we all know the wild man is not a myth. So mythical beings often associated with demonology that were commonly represented in medieval Europe and documented in revels of Tudor England. Charles VI had already disguised himself as a wild man in 1389 and did it again in a charivari in 1393 when a lady-in-waiting remarried. He and a number of dignitaries went to have a wild man dance. They put on tight-fitting suit and smeared it with pitch and sprinkled it with feathers and hemp and flax fibers like a kind of furry fur. They were chained together and danced wildly around the company. The Earl of Orleans wanted to know who was behind the mask and held a torch too close. The suit caught fire and 4 of the 6 wild men were burned alive. The king survived because one of the women wrapped her cloak around him. Unfortunately, after this dramatic event, he became insane, despite this disaster. So now we're back to the image of the Wildman Ball. So as you all can see, I've highlighted some circle parts. Now sometimes these people do a very poor job of whitewashing images, and as you can see in the circle highlights, all of their faces are still brown. Now, the image may be too small if you're watching this on a mobile device, so if you guys want to see this image for yourselves, just type in Ball of the Burning Men and it should come up. So now, this is for you brothers and sisters that believe that the wild man comes from fallen angel seed, or that the wild man is some kind of reptilian lizard hybrid. What you guys have to understand, when it comes in form of the spirits, left hand side angels or evil spirits, they were created by the Most High to carry out his wrath, his judgments, and his destruction. Evil spirits, left hand side angels, do not rebel from the Most High. They take his orders. So with that being said, this is Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Most High, Yahweh, do all these things. So like I said, evil spirits were created to carry out the judgments of the Most High. So this is Ecclesiasticus 39:28. There be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In the time of destruction they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him that made them. Let's read on further. Fire and hail and famine and death, all these were created for vengeance. Teeth of wild beasts and scorpions, serpents and the sword, punishing the wicked to destruction. They shall rejoice in his commandment, and they shall be ready upon earth when need is. And when their time is come, they shall not transgress his word. So once again, the Most High can use a left-hand side angel or an evil spirit to carry out anything that we just read. Like for example, the Most High can tell an angel, I want you to go over there and create a tornado and destroy that place because that's my wrath. He can tell another angel, I want you to go over here and create a forest fire or an earthquake to carry out judgment on this population of people. The Most High can send an evil spirit unto somebody to strike them with madness. And as we can see, even the animals carry out the judgment of the Most High. However the Most High sees fit, if the Most High directly himself commands an animal to carry out his judgment, or he tells an angel to command that animal to carry out his judgment, or he tells an evil spirit to go into that animal to carry out his judgment. However the Most High sees fit. Point being is this: left-hand side angels, evil spirits, do not rebel from the Most High. They take his commandments. So this is 1 Kings 22, skipping down to the 19th verse. And he said, Hear thou therefore the word of the Most High. I saw the Most High sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. So who are the host of heaven? So these are basically the left-hand side angels, the right-hand side angels, spirits, what have you. Let's see what the Most High had to say to them. And the Most High said, Who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this manner, and another said at that manner. And there came forth a spirit and stood before the Most High and said, I will persuade him. And the Most High said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. So let's see how the Most High responded. And he said, Thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. Now therefore, behold, the Most High had put a lying spirit in the mouth of all thy prophets, and the Most High had spoken evil concerning thee. Now wait a minute. Shouldn't left-handed side angels / evil spirits be rebellious against the Most High? Shouldn't they just be roaming around the earth trying to corrupt mankind to stick it to the Most High? Here you have them having counsel, having a meeting with the Most High, discussing how to carry out His will. They literally have to get the nod of approval. Let's read it again, starting from 22. And the Most High said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. So how did the Most High respond? And he said, Thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. So the lying spirit literally had to get the nod of approval from the Most High. So this is Psalm 78:49. He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, and indignation, and trouble, by sending evil angels among them. Brothers, sisters, one more time, the left-handed side angels / evil spirits, they work for the Most High. They were spirits created for vengeance. They carry out the judgments, the wrath, and the vengeance of the Most High. Satan wasn't in heaven, and he rebelled against the Most High, and some of the angels went with Satan, and then they all got cast to earth, and they got cast to hell, and Satan is in hell, sitting on his throne with the angels that followed him, and they became demons. That is all false. Rebellious angels didn't come from heaven, took wives, and mated with women. So intrinsically, the wild man is not no reptilian lizard hybrid that comes from fallen angel seed. I'm going to say it once, I'm going to say it again. All the wild man is the Caucasian being cast off from civilization, where he got cast off to the wooded regions, the forests, the mountains, and the caves, where he delved into his beast-like state, where he grew excessive body hair, and he crawled around on all fours. So now this is one of the major verses, which is a huge stumbling block for a lot of people. So this is Isaiah 14:12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? So on the surface level, you read this here, and you think that Satan was in heaven, he got cast down, and he corrupted mankind. So first and foremost, Lucifer is not the name of Satan. Lucifer is basically a title, and it's a Latin word, and it means enlightenment, shining one, or light bearer. Now you can use the term Lucifer for a literal sense or a metaphorical sense. For example, if we were in a dark tunnel, and let's just say I found a torch, and I shined that torch which lit up the tunnel. Now you can technically call me Lucifer, because now I'm bearing the light that shines the tunnel. You can also technically call me Lucifer right now, because I'm shining light on the scriptures. I'm giving you enlightenment on these verses. Now the reason why the term Lucifer is associated with Satan, it's because the left-hand side sees Satan as their light bearer, as their enlightened one. It's basically a title that the left-hand side gives to Satan. But Lucifer is not Satan's name. So now you might be asking to yourself, well, KMZ, if this is not talking about Satan, then who is this talking about? So this is talking about Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who got cast out from his rulership. Basically, Nebuchadnezzar became a wild man. So this is Daniel 4, skipping down to the 28th verse. All this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. The king spake and said, Is this not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken. The kingdom is departed from thee, and they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beast of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. The same hour was the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men, and did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. So Nebuchadnezzar was cast down from the Most High, and he basically became like an animal. The very same thing which happened to the Caucasian in the Dark Ages. So now, if you click on the word Lucifer in that verse, it's in reference to the king of Babylon in the Blue Letter Bible. So as you can see here, Lucifer equals light bearer, shining one, or morning star. Lucifer, of the king of Babylon. And Satan, figuratively, Hallel, describing the king of Babylon. So conclusion, some of you probably believe in that fallen angel doctrine because you've been taught by the Christian church, Catholicism, or a lot of these different religious doctrines. You also probably believe in it because you subscribe to the Book of Enoch, which makes for a great fairy tale, which is probably going to trigger a lot of people, but it is what it is. Angels weren't dwelling in heaven, and they saw that the women of the earth were beautiful, and they got tempted, so they came down, took wives, and they created some kind of hybrid fallen angel seed human thing. Or Satan was in heaven, and he got jealous of the Most High, and he was beefing with the Most High, and he gathered some angels to try and overthrow the Most High, and then he got cast down. All of that is false. And just like I've proved with the scriptures, left-handed side angels / evil spirits, they work for the Most High. They were created to carry out the vengeance of the Most High and the wrath. Now, for those of you who still don't really understand, even though I went over some of the verses, a mandatory recommendation, I've recommended this brother before, is watch Tribe Judah teach. The fallen angel doctrine is a lie, and angels did not have sex who are the sons of God. The videos are not long at all, and he gets straight to the point. I'm going to leave the links in the description. So I'm going to say this one last time. The wild man does not come from some kind of reptilian, lizard, hybrid, fallen angel offspring. All the wild man is the Caucasians being cast off from civilization where they dwelt in the mountainous regions, the forests, the woods, and in the caves where they delved into the beast state known as the wild man, where they crawled on all fours, grew excessive body hair, and were massively filthy. They were cast to the bottomless pit, and I went over the bottomless pit in my Byzantine icons and Black Russians video around the 1 hour and 12-minute mark. So hopefully this was an edifying lesson for you brothers and sisters. If you guys like my videos, if you guys want to donate for my video making efforts, you can donate to me on Cash App or Patreon. With that being said, giving all praises to the Most High Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai. Deuces.